I'd like to ask you a question. Suppose a man lives in the medieval age. He is a soldier in an army, which had just won against an enemy state. As the spoils of war, he receives a female war captive who has a husband. In the following events, he proceeds to have intercourse with her without her consent. In any day or age, do you think what this man did is morally and ethically correct? And do you believe a God would allow this? The answer to the first question, for any rational individual, would be a resounding no. However, the second question is the theme of today's video. What if I told you that the actions of this man were condoned by none other than the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, in his holy scripture, Quran? In this video, we will discuss the scriptural evidence allowing this, the tafsir, hadith, and the evidences in regards to the necessity of consent. Finally, we will discuss the common apologetic responses and dismantle them. Quran chapter 4, verse 24. وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Also forbidden are married women, except female captives in your possession. This verse talks about the prohibition on marrying already married women. Further, it places an exception on female captives you own. This means that if you have a female slave who has a husband, regardless of her marriage, you can marry her. There is a deeper meaning to this verse if we look at the context behind it, from both tafsirs and hadith. Let's read an excerpt from Ibn Kathir's tafsir about this verse. Imam Ahmad recorded that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, "We captured some women from the area of Autas who were already married, and we disliked having sexual relations with them because they already had husbands. So we asked the Prophet about this matter, and this ayah was revealed." That is, Quran chapter 4, verse 24. Also forbidden are women already married, except those whom your right hands possess. Consequently, we had sexual relations with these women. Picture this: a young woman, torn from her home, her family and husband never to be seen again. She's brought to a strange land in chains, powerless, and handed over to a man who claims the right to her body. No choice, no consent, just obedience or punishment. Now ask yourself, would a God who is truly just, truly wise, and all-knowing ever permit this, in any place, in any time, simply because it was common practice? Does morality vanish when it is culturally acceptable? Now, going further, we will examine the hadith evidences regarding this incident. Here are 3 hadith displayed from Jami at-Tirmidhi and Sunan an-Nasa'i, the first 2 from Jami at-Tirmidhi and the last from Sunan an-Nasa'i respectively. As you can see, supported from the tafsir and hadith, this is a well-recorded incident that took place. Now we move on to evidences regarding to this event, that consent is not required when having sexual relations with a female war captive. Firstly, both in the Quran and hadith, there is no indication which imposes the condition of consent. Rather, in Quranic verses like chapter 4, verse 3, chapter 4, verse 24, chapter 23, verse 6, and chapter 33, verse 50, actually make it permissible. From this alone, we can logically deduce that consent is irrelevant. Secondly, the majority of scholars of Islam have stated that it is obligatory for a female slave to give herself to her master. It says, it is wajib, obligatory in Arabic, on a female slave to provide herself to her master for sexual intimacy, and it is haram for her to stop him from it, because it is his right. Moving forward, scholars have also noted that a master can punish his female slave for refusing intimacy. Now, friends, ask yourself, if the God of Islam is perfect and merciful, why would he allow, even legislate, the harm of a woman in this way? And if you feel wrong in your heart, what does that say about the man who claimed this was God's will? Pause this video and think deeply about it. Now, We move on to the common Islamic apologetic responses in regards to this argument placed critical to Islam. Number 1. It was common during the time of the Prophet to do these acts. Even the non-Muslims did this. This is by far the weakest arguments in defense of the religion. God would not allow and endorse harm on a woman, or his creation, let alone rape a woman, regardless of day and age, since God's wisdom transcends human-made cultures and ignorance. The fact that the God of Islam allows this is directly contradicting to his own nature, as described in the Quran, in verses chapter 2, verse 163, and chapter 4, verse 17. Another common apologetic response is that it was only allowed back then, and it is abolished and not practiced now. The apologist who would say this is either being dishonest or ignorant about the scriptures of his or her own religion. Nowhere in the Quran or the Hadith is it stated that the non-consensual sexual relations with female war captives is only a decree for that age. Further, the mere fact that God supposedly allowed Muhammad and his companions to rape female captives would alone discredit Muhammad as a prophet, as again, regardless of day and age, God would not allow harm, let alone rape a woman. Instead, God would have asked Muhammad to stop, as he knows how destructive this act would be to the female captive, both physically and mentally. But he did not. Another apologetic response is that Muhammad and his companions were married to the female slaves. Yet again, this response stems from a source of dishonesty or ignorance. In the Hadith and Tafsir that I had previously shown, there is no mention of marriage. Muhammad and his soldiers simply captured the women and proceeded to have intercourse with them after Muhammad's supposed divine revelation. That is Quran, chapter 4, verse 24. Another response, that if a man has to wait until the female captive's waiting period, how is he fulfilling his desires? This response stems not from dishonesty, but rather a desperate attempt at defense. Again, while it's true that a man may have to wait until the captive's waiting period, it still doesn't change the fact that God allows the rape of female captives, and it does not help alleviate the situation. The last response, that the slaves were treated better than the captives of that era. Again, this does not amend the fact that the female captive could be enslaved, stripped from her family, and raped, all without her consent. This is something that I have already proven with the help of tafsirs and hadith. Now, I'd like to end with a few words. Right and wrong is not defined by time, place, or culture. It is defined by whether the action protects or harms an innocent life. I repeat, it is defined not by culture, time, or place, but rather by virtue, whether it protects or harms an innocent person. Now, if you still believe that this command truly came from God, what does that say about your God? Or is it a forgery from a man who wanted to fulfill his desires?